One. Well, let me start out with not just but good afternoon, Frank. It's been what feels like a month or two since we've been regular on the podcast. Um, I don't even my memory's shot. Ever since I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine I've deemed it the one shot, one kill. I went into the hospital 10 days after getting the shot with an adverse reaction. Discharge papers clearly say, you had an adverse reaction to the vaccine. These things are real. But since then, unfortunately, I lost my AirPods while I was at the hospital. Just in my rush to leave, I left them in the room, and they fell into the deep corners of the VA hospital system, and never to be seen again, I'm sure.
Now, Noah, you're a big proponent of the vaccines, and so even with everything that you went through with the adverse reaction, I know that you know someone else who's close to you who had what seems like a pretty rough adverse reaction to the vaccine as well. What has that altered your stance? What's your take on? Obviously, vaccines can and do work, but what has that experience done to you when you process vaccines and you process, do I need a vaccine? How has that affected you? I guess your attitude toward, hey, I'm gonna need this vaccine, or I'd rather not have this vaccine, or I'd rather wait on this vaccine. How has that affected your view of, let's go get vaccinated, let's wait, do I have to get vaccinated? How's that impacted you?
Okay, a little frame of reference. My wife had a severe adverse reaction, and she was in the hospital intensive care for a week on blood thinner. And she posted her story about this on her social media, and she really suffered. She really suffered because her leg swelled up, and she had blood clots in both her lungs. And we were looking at a timeline of hours of danger zone for her. With her essentially getting a thrombectomy, which is, that's an invasive procedure where they go up through the femoral artery of the leg, all the way through your heart into your lungs, so they can suction out some of the many blood clots that she was affected by. So that is as a background of seeing that, and she had a different pharmaceutical. It's one, either Moderna or Pfizer, but I just went to the VA 3 months later after she's all well and clear, still on blood thinner medicine for a year. I went in and I'm like, it's just time. I need to do this. Big brother, big business in corporate America is, I see the path we're taking, like in New York City, where you cannot use the gym without proving showing your papers. Now, I don't like that whatsoever. I don't like the lack of freedom there, because that is just, to me, that crosses some line. Although I've been thinking about it more of it's for health and safety, but then there's a lot of controversy around it. It's just like applying one solution over an unknown, not well known, not well understood, and variegated problem set. And that's where the trouble lies, is it became politicized. So standing back, I knew I needed to get the vaccination, even though I am absolutely sure that I was exposed to the virus in February 2020. And I felt far worse then than I did recently. But I did have symptoms that were similar to what I experienced a year and a half ago. And I promised myself.
You had symptoms. Are you saying you had symptoms after getting the vaccine? You had symptoms, or are you saying you had symptoms before you got the vaccine that prompted you to go and get the vaccine?
The former. 10 days after I received the vaccine. So 12 hours after I got the vaccine, I felt a little tired. But 10 days after, I felt I was feverish. I was admitted through the ER at the VA with 102.2 fever. My urinalysis and blood work indicated I was fighting. They admitted me under sepsis. They thought I had sepsis, and
that pushes you right to the front of the line. You go to the emergency room, and if they're looking at sepsis, you're not waiting 5 hours, 10 hours. You're getting pushed right to the front of the line. You're the true emergency. Most people go into the emergency room, they're not treated like it's an emergency. Right?
I went straight.
Yeah.
There's like a little, just like you see like in some like war zone, there's like a little canvas or like a little, like MASH tent outside the VA. Yeah. So they put me in there and like, oh no, you're running a fever. We got to bring you inside. So they put me inside and I walked through like this bubble, and I had a guy with a mask on. He had a breathing system like what you see at the CDC or at some kind of smallpox research lab.
Darth Vader treating you.
Yes, and they were monitoring my heart because I was running. My heart rate was around 120, 130 beats per minute. Yeah. And my normal heart rate is between 70 to 80. It's crept up over a few years, I've noticed. But running temperature, high heart rate. There were markers in my blood indicating that I was fighting a massive infection. So they quarantined me, negative COVID test, negative. And it was an experience. I was suffering. I was suffering a bit, but every 12 hours it improved.
This went on. This built up over a 10-day period, right?
No, not at all, Frank. Within 24 hours, like at 2 p.m. on Friday, I was feeling like achy, fluish. Like, oh, I don't feel too great. This is weird, but I'm like, this is not good. I knew already. My tinnitus that I have, tinnitus as some people say, was really high. When I got the shot 10 days earlier, I had metal taste in my mouth, and my tinnitus went up. Tinnitus is like, so think of it like of a white noise that's always there. It's always there. Like right now, it's pretty strong. It's always there. And
is that from your military background with firing guns and firing weapons, or is it something else?
Well, that's a great question. That's a great question. And
of course, you could have some predisposition. Some people could have some predisposition, but normally there's a catalyst. There's something that intensifies and causes further ear injury. I had a buddy of mine out here. He's in his 70s now. His hearing was fine. He got invited by some big shot in the Air Force to a wedding in Colorado. He got invited, and when he went there, I guess it was a surprise to him. As a surprise during the wedding, they had or some event, some Air Force event, and he got to sit up in the front, and he was too close to, I guess, the jets or whatever they were flying, and it was so loud. I guess his ears never been the same since then. He just went to some Air Force event, and he has terrible tinnitus. He's in his 70s.
Wow.
I'm probably messing that story up, but that's my remembrance of it. Is like he was fine. He went to some event. He went to one event. Wasn't a guy that fired a lot of firearms. He wasn't a guy who was in a war zone or anything. But yeah. So
Well, let me
I know
describe
you're
this different. Actually, I'm gonna twist this a little bit because I want to make clarification on this. Um,
sure.
and this is something that I was explaining to my wife the other day because we're having a long discussion about this. Um, so my hearing is pretty good, um, and that's despite the fact of me. I was an air traffic controller in the Corps. I wasn't the guy with the flashlight. I was, you have air traffic controllers, like normal FAA. So I was an FAA air traffic controller, but I was serving in the military,
Yeah.
and so I had my own airspace. And I was also part of that time in is like a mobile airfield unit, which you could just drop down into, let's say, the desert, and you just pop up a air traffic control tower and like a shipping container with air traffic control radar equipment in it, and I would work inside that, but it's not far away from the runway, and so yeah, you're right. You hear that. You hear the aircraft exhaust, roaring, and you feel that in your stomach. And
But you know what's weird is that I'll bet you. I mean, you get so accustomed to it, so desensitized to it that you don't think it's doing any. I mean, I'm not saying it did damage, but even if it was doing damage, you get so used to it that you don't think that much. It's not like, wow, this is so loud. The human mind generally will adapt to these things over time and just okay, that's the noise. You just get used to it and you just go about your business and you don't think. Is just like a guy firing a lot of guns. At some point he doesn't think, oh my god, that blast is going to damage my ears. You just kind of get used to it and you don't, if you're at a concert, if you go to a bunch of loud concerts,
mm-hmm.
you don't at some point, if you keep going to loud concerts, you don't realize how loud they are. Your brain adapts, like, okay, fine, you might even enjoy it.
But
It's strange.
yeah, let me continue to clarify here what I experience. So the hearing's good, except people tend to get lazy in their pronunciation and their articulation, and they'll leave off. They won't enunciate or articulate their words, and I will not hear the end of it, or I won't hear the beginning of it. But that's a hearing issue. Tinnitus is 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 like now this for me, okay? What I experience is not from my ears, but inside my brain. It's different. It's like so that what I hear, what I'm experiencing is a sound that it's inside my brain, but not really. I don't detect it from my ears. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense
Yeah,
to you.
I
It's
understand.
really
Yeah,
weird.
yeah.
It's really weird, and because I've done a lot of hearing tests since leaving the Corps, and I have
You know that Dana
decent read.
White. So, yeah, Dana White had, it's called Meniere's disease. I guess they had a name, which is a sort of I guess the best most of us would understand is kind of like a relative of tinnitus. But he had. I think the story that I heard from Dana was he'd been jumped when he was younger. He had been jumped in a fight, and I guess he was, during that beating, his ears were messed up. So that ear that really bothered him might have been related to being jumped. I think it was back in Boston, and way before there was anything called the UFC.
Yeah,
Back when he was pretty much like a valet, or he was teaching boxer-size classes, and then he was working valet too. He was making like 80,000-90,000 a year. I mean, this is a long time ago, and valet parking, hard jobs to get, and he hated it. He sort of hated like even like just the way you were treated, like a third class person by a lot of people. Anyway, but he had this ear thing, and then finally, I believe he went to Germany. And last time I spoke to him, I didn't get to ask about that. But as of a couple of years ago, I'd heard from another person, like he's like, the surgery in Germany went really well for his ears. And I know like his ears would really act up a lot when he would fly. They're always, UFC is always flying, and he's on these long flights over the Atlantic, and, flying at 32,000 or 35,000, 38,000 feet would wreak havoc on his ears. But the procedure in Germany helped him. Anyway, so now we're talking about, by the way, I had one of the worst, since we're on this, because it's interesting, we talk about ears and ears, when people think of grapplers, they don't normally think of hear loss or tinnitus or anything like that. They think of course, cauliflower ear. And then the question that I've had for some of my friends that have a lot of cauliflower, like Randy Couture or Forrest Griffin's, like, can you hear the same? Is it kind of like a cloudiness where you can't hear the same? And, you can still hear through that ear, even with all the cauliflower, but it's not, it's not like it's not as ideal, because again, there's going to be some obstruction of those sound waves going in the ear. I mean, it's not the same ear, but you can still hear. So cauliflower in and of itself certainly doesn't make you deaf, right? You can have a ton of cauliflower, you can still hear, but you probably don't have the same hearing you would have if you had, no cauliflower, right? But anyway, the one of the worst injuries that I had, in fact, it made me cry when I was 14 years old. I went to a wrestling camp in Pennsylvania. Remember, I'm from Maryland. In Maryland, we've produced some really good wrestlers. We've had national champions in high school. We had Helen Maroulis, who was a Olympic gold medalist. The last Olympics, this Olympics, she got the bronze medal, but she came back from, a lot of injuries and everything. And so she's a Marylander. Kyle Snyder, who just got a silver medal at the Olympics, and who I think he won gold. I think he was a gold medalist when he was like 21, and he was a world champion. But he's a Marylander. Anyway, having said all of that about Maryland, Pennsylvania, of course, is in a league all its own. Like, they just blow us away for the number of top-notch wrestlers, national champions and All-Americans. And you look at what Penn State is doing now. They capitalize on all that talent in Pennsylvania. Cale Sanderson's really been the only coach. Before he went to Penn State, they won like three national titles in like 55, 60 years. And then since he's gotten there, I think they've got 7 or 8, right? And they just produced David Taylor, who just won the Olympic gold medalist. But anyway, Cale Sanderson's changed the culture. He's changed everything there at Penn State, and he's keeping a lot of those Pennsylvanians that used to go to other colleges. He's keeping them there. He's keeping them going to Penn State, and what they're doing something amazing there. They've been doing it. But anyway, I went up to a wrestling camp in Pennsylvania. While I'm there, all kinds of great stuff. I'm at my first wrestling camp. And then, there's a time where you go outside, you go to the pool, and a buddy just says, "Hey, can I dive off your shoulders?" Another 14-year-old kid, "Can I dive? Can I stand on your shoulders, Frank, and dive off them and dive in the water?" And, you just don't think anything. And I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead, man. Like, stand on my shoulders, and, it sounds like fun. Dive." And so when he does it, when he dives off, he kicks me in the ear. I don't know how he did that. I don't know how, because you think his feet are positioned on me, so it would be impossible. But when he kicks, he winds up kicking my ear with his foot like a mule kick. Don't know how that happened, but it did. And him diving off my shoulders, he did an extra kick. Once he dove off, his foot recoiled and went boom. Dude, it ruptured my eardrum. I could not, like that. The pain that night was so one of the worst nights of my life. And I cried, here I was, 14-year-old kid, and I did not cry easy. I've always had a very high pain threshold. Oh my goodness. I had some tears coming down my eyes that night. That was a night of agony. So that was really my only brush. You see a lot, Noah, in boxing. I think it was Oscar De La Hoya, Fernando Vargas, I think, when they fought. And I think it was De La Hoya hit Vargas. I think, if I remember, it was either Vargas hit De La Hoya, or I thought De La Hoya had a great left hook. That was it. And Vargas was actually a guy who had a good hook too. But anyway, I think it might have been Vargas hit De La Hoya, or De La Hoya hit him. I mean, one of them landed this vicious hook on the ear. And I just remember, and, it didn't knock the other guy out, but I was just like, my God, you think of these boxers getting clubbed in the ear. I mean, people have no idea. Like, we always think about behind the ear and the equilibrium, and we've seen that in fighting, but getting punched in the ear itself, my goodness, the eardrum's so fragile, very painful injury. And like, anyway, what you're describing with tinnitus, with that incessant ringing that you're saying to us, hey, it's not so much that it's even my ear, it's something that's in your brain, almost like this constant, I don't know, something that would make a lot of people kind of go crazy and be like, please stop, please stop, please stop.
I don't, yeah,
Stop.
I mean, it's there. I notice it, but I want to continue sharing a little bit here
Okay.
from my recent hospital stay, because there's something salient. So when they had me in Saturday, when I went in Saturday, early Saturday, like before like 8 a.m., and so they put me on telemetry where they're monitoring my heart, and they pushed a ton. I've got full bags of saline in me over 24 hours,
And that was designed what?
Just to fully hydrate me, and they were dropping in antibiotics and going at this. So they ran a differentiated saline into me while I got an MRI.
That was intravenously putting that saline in you?
Yeah. And they ran a dye into it the Saturday afternoon, looking for anything going on with my heart and lungs. That came back negative. So that evening, they wheeled me back in there. And this time, they they did a head CT and an MRI on my head, both. I was in an MRI machine for 45 minutes, and I don't know how much time you've spent in MRIs. The last few years, I've probably spent 4 to 6 hours in MRI machines in the last 5 years. A lot of time. And what came out of it is, so nothing showed up with my heart and lungs, thankfully. And I was also having a consistent pressure right here in my forehead that whole time. And so they're concerned about there being potential blood clot in my forehead. And so they ran a head CT, and they also did a differentiated, they ran dye through it. And so something came back on my head CT and MRI. What they noticed, and I get confused with whether it's the 7th or 8th cranial nerve. Your body is basically symmetric. Asymmetric means one side is not like the other, but symmetric means, you could hold a mirror image up and they both look alike. They came back to me and said that and I just don't recall, I have to look in the notes. From that work, the MRI, they noticed that one of those two nerves was not symmetrical. They were asymmetric. And that's interesting to me, very interesting, because I believe it's the 8th cranial nerve that affects both your hearing and your sense of balance. Now, I have a bit of a problem on my left side, and I've always had a bit of a problem on my left side, from my ankle all the way up to my hip and to the bulging disc that I have in my lower back. And I've had shoulder problems on my right side. But I'm saying all this because the balance issue that I have to fight, I have to work hard on my balance on my left side. It's just like, like when you start learning how to dance, or, when you're following a new move, it just seems new every time. That's what I feel when I'm standing and I'm trying to balance on my left side. It's a little bit more challenging. So it's either the 7th or 8th cranial nerve that has been damaged somehow, or it didn't, somehow it's been damaged. And I don't know where in the anatomy where that's at, but, I did I did have some injuries when I was in the Corps, and I didn't really report it. I sucked it up. And if any Marine or any service member hears this and you're not out of the service yet, go and get that stuff documented in your medical records. I cannot say this enough. Get, I saw something on Reddit about Marines. We are literally trained to endure hardship physically and mentally. That's what our training is for. But unfortunately, when you get out and that early 20-year-old body turns into a 50-year-old body, it shows the wear and tear. You and I are both the same age. And I'm telling you, I'm having like my engine doesn't run like it used to. I got to do more maintenance on it, and I'm heavier, so I gotta, I'm working right now on following a keto diet to get some of those pounds off and lighten the load. And man, any military, active service military out there, you get any injuries, go in. Don't worry about, oh, you're weak or all that. Get them documented. It doesn't mean you're a malingerer. It doesn't mean that you're trying to get out of duty. There is a whole network and support structure for you when you get out. Okay, like, yeah, sacrifice the body while you're in, but get it documented. I can't tell you how. Like, my knees are permanently scarred from running and hitting the deck. On hard gravel. I'm up. He sees me. I'm down. That right there is you're throwing your body into the ground so you don't have a bullet shot at you. And we would do this for hours on end. When I got out of the boot camp and went to infantry training, all Marines go to combat training afterwards because boot camp's not enough. And that stuff wreaks havoc on your body. And you don't see the price until you're like 50 years old, 40 and 50 years old. Jiu-jitsu, there is probably some minute possibility that like a guillotine or some kind of head injury, non-concussive head injury could cause a cranial nerve damage. But this is like early on. This has to happen very early on that you get that kind of damage, and it does that. So I'm just saying, to all that to be said, there's a neurological basis in a lot of our problems, and it's not, if you're looking only at the tympanic membrane of your ear, that's like looking at symptoms but not causes. You got to look at more of the nerve damage. The nerve damage is where it's at, and that's deeper, and that creates. There are other things that you don't see right away unless you start to look at your neurological system.
Going back to the vaccine.
Sorry about that.
To the vaccines. If you could go back before you got the vaccine, would you do things exactly the same way that you did last time? Would you just say, hey, you know what? That's just the way it is. It's the vaccines are so worth it. The protection. This is a very strong virus, Frank. I would do it all over again, and I do it the same way.
Yes, I think that there's not much difference in how I approach it because I waited almost 4 months after my wife had her episode, so that I know she was in the clear, and I had I observed strict rule set per se about things like, okay, if I get sick, like I knew that night, the Friday night at around 11 p.m. I knew already that I was going to be in the hospital the next day. I knew already. I'm like, this is not good. I know this has got to be related to the vaccine.
Yeah.
And so the statistics that the epidemiologists are reporting for like, 1 in a million, it's far less. It's far less than that. But I was vigilant, and I'm like, okay, if I'm going to get sick.
When you say it's far less, I want to put this in perspective. What you're saying is, listen, if we're making up a number here, by the way, so this is not an accurate number, but if the epidemiologists say, look, if hypothetically they were saying, look, there's a 1 in a million chance that someone would have an adverse reaction to this vaccine that would be blood clotting, you're saying, you're saying, nope. I want to say that I think the risk of that is there's a much higher risk than that whatever number that they're using right now. That's
I would lop off 3 zeros and say you have a 1 in 1,000 or 1 in hundreds. I wouldn't buy into those statistics because those are generalities and there's a lot of underreporting that goes on. It's just I had already gone through a really bad experience that February 2020. And so it seemed like
that was when you actually had what you believe was the COVID virus itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, because for 3 days I couldn't reach out.
And so you're saying, hey, you're saying to everybody, hey, I had that experience. Yes, I know that my immune system might recognize COVID later if it came across it again, maybe even a variant, but I didn't want to take the chance. I wanted to have the vaccine to have that extra protection so that if I encountered that virus again, it wouldn't, my body would handle it better, would handle that virus better. But that's in getting the vaccine.
Yeah, it would be, it won't kill me. It'll make me, Drysdale's saying, he likes to repeat Nietzsche. Yeah, he likes to repeat. Yeah, he likes to repeat Nietzsche. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So, that's totally, I see that. But there's also that question you asked me is, my wife asked me that question too. And she says, seeing what I went through, she's saying the same thing. I'm like, yep, I still would.
Well, the thing that, and again, this is the first time you and I correspond almost daily, which is a good thing, even if it's just saying hello. And like I've said, you are a true friend. You're always, in whether it be in big ways or small ways, you're always looking to help. And when you went through that whole thing, I mean, even when your wife went through it, I was genuinely concerned. Your wife's a smart woman. She's getting the PhD, and that was like, so you have this strong woman, strong body, and super smart, and then bam, here comes this scary adverse reaction she has. Like, oh my God, when you see someone that's strong and vibrant and smart, and then you see whether it's a virus, whether it's an adverse reaction, whether it's the virus, whether it's an adverse reaction to vaccine, whether it's just nature or an accident. It's very humbling to see how quickly our life can be turned upside down, when you realize the health as well. So when that happened to you, you just realize, because like, I have my brother, his wife, who's been so kind to me, and who's just a model of grace and faith. And she's just showed him and me and a bunch of people like what unconditional love is. And, she's dying right now, stage 4 cancer. She's a sweetheart, and she's any day now, so, I mean, we're all of us, like, we're seeing, whether it's COVID or whether it's cancer or whether it's heart disease or whether it's a car accident or whether it's opioids, we're just, or whether it's a suicide, which I've seen a bunch of those. It's just, you and I are at that age too, where when you get to be this age, by the time you're this age, people have died on you, and a lot more start dying on you. Or you hear, I've got another buddy back in Baltimore committed suicide a couple months ago, and it's just, we're about that age where it starts to rack up now, right? You just start to hear, or somebody. And so it's really, it's just something that you have to get used to. You have to have a perspective on it. You realize health is wealth. You realize not to take your friends for granted. You realize to follow up with your friends. You realize, is there any little thing I can do for them? Can I visit them? Can I do something nice for them? Can I do something nice for their family? Just these are things that these are, especially, like I said, by the time you're our age, you got those of us who still have parents alive. It's like, wow, like, life and death is something I think about almost every day, or not, just whether it's me or someone else. I think about life, and it just kind of puts everything in perspective, man. I think about today I was training jiu-jitsu, and I still, I'm out there with these guys who are 23, 25. I've been doing it 36 years, and I'm like, how grateful I am to be able to sweat and be out there
Mm-hmm.
and leave in one piece. Like Dan Gable was done by the time he was 46. He was done. His hips couldn't take it. His body couldn't take it. I'm like, I don't have an Olympic gold medal, but I always wonder, I didn't get to ask Gable, like, would you trade that Olympic gold medal for the ability to have been able to wrestle for 20 more years? I think he'd have traded the gold medal in. I really do. I think if I could ask him another question, if I ever get to interview Dan Gable again, if you had been able to extend your career by 20 years, but you give away the gold medal, I think he'd have said they can have the gold medal. I'd rather the 20 more years of doing what I love. And anyway, the point is, we're at a place in life now where Sting, the artist, has a song called Fragile. And if you haven't heard it out there, you should listen to it. It's called Fragile. And it's like, that's kind of what I think, even though I love the warrior and the Spartan ethos. I love that ethos. And I think that despite me looking all yuppie-ish, I can tell you that, I've embraced that ethos, at least in terms of hand-to-hand combat and training, at least. But at the same time, you realize how fragile we are, man. We humans are very fragile. Even those of us that think we're tough or we have high pain thresholds, the same guy who's physically tough and can take a punishment, his wife leaves him and then he's suicidal. He melts. He loses his job and he melts. He loses the income he used to make, and now he feels like zero, and now he's depressed or whatever.
Hey, it sounds like you're describing me.
No,
all those things.
Me too.
But
me too.
Yeah. But I'm going to tell you, the message that Ensign Inoue writes in his biography really hits home with me. To live as a man, die as a man, and his message is face death. Face death honorably. Come to your own death. Facing it, and because that in that last breath, in that last second that you're alive,
yeah,
that is the ultimate defining moment. And I gotta say, I got some darkness I gotta bring up, and I have a solid foundation now, and on the internet, there's Reddit. And Reddit has some very dark places. You see people committing suicide in videos on there. And I've found in the past, whenever I was so dark down, I was watching those videos, and I wasn't watching it for like something I would want to do, but with the thought of what Ensign's, facing death and seeing people take their own lives, or how quickly life is lost. Like I see, I saw one video of like an Indian woman, and there's kids all around her, and they're playing in like this stream, and this little boy is sliding down, and she's facing the other direction, and he slides under her. She falls back and hits the back of her skull on that rock that stream is flowing. It was a very light stream. Okay, and she dies instantly like that. And you see that kind of stuff, and you see the brutality of what ISIS was doing, and you see those things, and it hits you in your gut, and you're like, man, this thing I have, this life, is so precious, and it can be gone at any moment, and it will be. Will my end be gory and violent? And I say violent and sudden. Not like a veteran dying out in the hospital, and my light just goes dim, and that go off. Something bad, a crash or some kind of accident. But it will not be by my own hands.
This
never by my own hands.
As a guy who's been, again, that's good to hear. And
yeah, never.
If they tell you that Frank committed suicide,
investigate that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you better.
Yeah, absolutely.
You better
That's same for me. I've got too much.
if I was going to tap out, I'd have tapped out a long time ago.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But this is one of my favorite topics as somebody who studied philosophy in college and who got a degree in philosophy when everybody was like, what in the world are you going to do with a philosophy degree? Like, oh, that's just stupid. It's silly. And in a lot of ways, they were right. There's better things to major in.
Come on.
But I love this topic we're having, which is, drawing meaning, acquiring or giving meaning to life. I think our relationship, how we process death, says so much about life or our ability to live to the fullest, right? Our ability to be fulfilled. And so, as an example, and this is going to go on, like I'm going to kind of get like Peter Drucker, the great organizational business leader. I'm going to go on a little Peter Drucker thing here. You're going to be like, where did he go? He's going off on a tangent, but
go ahead.
Try to bring it full circle, which is okay. So yesterday, I'm training for just to tie it in, since we're at jiu-jitsu, let's throw the bone at least, and let's talk a little jiu-jitsu. I'm training for the IBJJF Masters World Championships in October in Texas. I think that they're very strategic. They put it in Texas because they realize that it could be canceled anywhere else. It could be canceled in Texas, but it's probably the least likely place for it to be canceled, right? Like
there are Florida.
Last place is going to shut it down will be Texas, right? So they very strategically booked it in Texas. So I'm training. So yesterday, Saturdays are a big day for me to train. Open mat at Drysdale's. I get up there, I head up there, I do about 2 hours, and it's a big day. So I get up yesterday morning. Everything's going on schedule. I've got my green tea. I usually wake up fasting. I'm praying. I'm meditating. My mind's in a good place. I'm playing jiu-jitsu in my head. I get in the car, and I got to go stop by the bank. I'm local. I'm like not a mile from where I live, and the car's running funny. And I'm like, the first thing when your car's running funny, like, okay, so if you're just driving a lemon and your car's a piece of crap, then if it's driving funny, you're just kind of like, well, something's going to go wrong any day. But this is a Toyota Camry. I've had Toyota Camrys. I've had the Hondas. They run forever. This car doesn't have a lot of problems. It doesn't. So it was running like, wait, I'm driving a Toyota Camry. These things will run 300,000 miles, 400,000 miles to take care of it. Something's funny, and it didn't feel like the tires or anything. It felt like, is there something under the engine, whatever. Anyway, turns out to be a nail, flat tire. The tire goes completely flat. So then the question is, how far can you drive on that? Because when you're driving on the rim, you do a lot of damage. You don't want rim on the road, and you're driving miles for that. So I'm like, I've got to make a decision. Like, okay, how much? So I pull over, and I get lucky. I pull over. I drive 500 feet, and there's a mechanic shop there with an air thing, so I can get some air. And that gets me another block down the road where there's a tire place. So I'm like, all right, great. This couldn't happen more perfect. I get the air from these guys. I drive another block. I get in the tire place. I'm going to pay for the tires, and I'm going to drive to Summerlin 30 minutes away. I'm going to get my training in. Maybe I'll get an hour and a half instead of 2 hours. Get there to the tire place. They do what they do. Winds up needing 2 tires. I sit in there 3 hours. I don't get the train. Now, to the average person out there, okay, this is the difference between people that live this as a lifestyle, been doing it for 36 years and have titanium plates in their neck and almost lose their right leg and have blood clots and are still doing this, and broken hands, broken noses, and broken cheekbones. This is the difference between that person who's still doing this, who loves it, and everybody else who most people don't last 3 months, let alone 36 years. Me to miss that Saturday practice is not like, well, okay, no problem. I have an out. I have an excuse. I'm pissed that I'm going to miss, especially with October 7th or October 10th, the Masters World Championships. Yesterday was an important practice for me to work on a lot of things strategically.
Yeah.
I missed a very important practice, right? So that's a big deal. That was not like, okay, no big deal. Got to get the tires fixed. No, there's cognitive dissonance in me. I'm like, damn it. Can this move quicker? I But of course, I got to be patient with them. I can't pressure them. They get me in. That whole deal takes 3 hours. I have no idea why. It's a Saturday. They have other people, whatever. Anyway, and then I had to drive 30 minutes across town. I didn't get the train yesterday. That pissed me off. That made me feel like, man, I didn't get to put the work in. Now I went and got a workout in, and I did some shadow boxing, and I did some walking, but I didn't get the workout that I needed. That's specific to trying to win a Masters World title. I didn't get that kind of work in. So then I was looking at it. I was sitting there at Whole Foods, and I'm eating, and I'm like, damn it. I did work out today, but I missed my jiu-jitsu workout, right? And I'm like, so that means I'm getting one less jiu-jitsu workout in this week. Instead of 5, I used to get 10, I used to get 12, I used to get 13 jiu-jitsu, sometimes 15 jiu-jitsu workouts in a week. Now I'm looking at, hey, I'm only getting 4 instead of my 5. So I'm like, damn it, I'm eating dinner and it's bothering me. And I talked to this other guy, I call him Philosopher Rick. And he's like, Philosopher Rick is like this other 50-year-old guy who, like, he's one of those guys that cycles across the country, like the guy who, he doesn't have a car, he's a minimalist, and he's got like all his life on the bike, but he's like smarter than everybody. Like the guy can talk about this study, that study, the Milgram study, Stanford University. I mean, the guy's brilliant, right? But you're like, but he lives off his bike and he drives cross country. Anyway, Philosopher Rick, and I'm like, I tell Philosopher Rick, I'm like, man, this happened to me today. It sucked. It cost me $300. All these tires. I missed my practice, and then so Philosopher Rick and I are working through it, and we're like, but wait, let's look at. If we always have the power of choosing a perspective, right? And the other perspective would go something like this. And we all face these things every day in our life. The other perspective would go, well, wait, Frank, think of how lucky you were to get the flat on a Saturday morning when you don't have to work. You got plenty of money. You get at a time when you got plenty of money to fix it. There have been times in my life where I didn't have the money to fix that thing. So you had plenty of money. It's a Saturday morning. You don't have to work. You're not going to miss work. It happened. You were like a block and a half away from a tire shop, right? And you weren't going out here on the West Coast. I mean, most people on highway, and I drive on the highway all the time, you're driving 75 miles an hour. You get a flat, a blowout there, be a whole different ball game, whole different story. And it happens. And that car can do, no matter how good of a driver you are, that car can do. Other cars around you react to that. Somebody was driving too close. Whole nother ball game. So when you look in perspective, like, Frank, you missed a jiu-jitsu workout. How horrible that is for a guy. But we don't know. It's like, and maybe, sometimes in life too, Noah, we don't know was something good or bad for us. We don't know. It's to be continued. We don't find out till later, was it good or bad? We don't know. The worst event of your life, we might not know for 5 years, be like, that was actually a pretty damn good thing. We don't know. We think we can instantly analyze that was horrible. But time, a lot of times, is the indicator. Time and perspective and maturity is the indicator of, was that really a bad thing in my life? If it was a wake-up call, if it made you dig deeper, if it lit a fire under you, and no matter how humiliating it was it the worst day of your life, or was it actually in some weird way one of the best days of your life?
Or decades.
Yeah.
Or decades.
We don't always instantly know. So anyway, this is what I did yesterday. As like, there's still a part of me, that perfectionist, is like, damn it, I got to make that damn workout, because even though I got the train today, I missed yesterday's workout. And I know that. The preparer in me, who knows what it takes to win at a high level, is like, damn it. Like, the dog ate my homework, but the dog ate my homework, but I didn't get to train, right? And my opponents did probably get to train. But on the other hand, did I do the best I could? Yeah, I did. I did the best I could. I still got a workout in. Am I still in one piece? Am I still healthy? Was I driving 75 miles an hour, and then boom, and then what happens then? Mm-hmm. Anyway, just same thing with death, just to tie it all together. It's the same thing. Incidentally, you know, Dostoevsky talked about this too, and a lot of his themes in his book were basically the art of suffering well. How do I suffer well? And the dignity of it. And if you're like me, and I believe that we lived before, and I believe that we lived after. I believe that we just rent this flesh. I believe the spirit is kind of like electricity. Once the light is out, it doesn't mean that electricity around the world is dead. It's not. I mean, electricity goes on. The same thing that the computer technologies and the signals, they're always going to be there. Our spirits are signals that whatever, we just keep going. And so I believe that how we live has a lot to do with whatever is next. And I believe that how we die, and I think it was, I don't know if it was the Spartans, but a buddy of mine who's Greek and the Italian bloodline. I have a lot of the Italian, the Spanish, the Syrian blood, and the Italian and Greek blood the Southern Italian blood and the Greek blood are very similar. And he would tell stories about these Greek guys before they go into battle, and they would dance, they would feast, dance, and sing before battle. They were festive before battle, man. Like, dude, this is like they lived for it, you know? Let's dance. Let's do this. It's like, if you're going to face that, if you're going to face a war, bro, I didn't choose it. I didn't want it. But if we're going to do this, and that's the same attitude you have to have when you show up at a jiu-jitsu tournament. If you're going to be there, don't beat yourself. Make them have to beat you. You're there. You're capable. You put the work in. Do not dare beat yourself. Be like, dude, I'm getting it. It's my day today. I'm going to be difficult for anybody. I don't care who I'm going to be a hard out. Today's my day. And I think that, like what Ensign's talking about, man, if you're going to be on the front lines or whatever, stare it down like a freaking lion. And if you're going to go out with a bang. Go out with a party in your freaking heart, man. Go out swinging. Go out swinging, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real thing. And I think that that's some serious warrior stuff, man. Not everybody can do it, but I think he's right about that.
Totally agree. You know, it's a long haul. You know, what appears from us in our short time span. It's a long haul. This is, you know, you can't just shorten your time horizon to just, I didn't get to train today, but longer horizon. You know, like, you know, you got to be patient with yourself. But you know, it's funny.
Really, really quick. I want to say this for 20 seconds. Sometimes some people are big stage people. They're Super Bowl people. They're fine in those big moments. If they got to face Godzilla, they're fine. The hardest thing for some people, and we're all different, is it's not the big moments. It's not the Super Bowls. It's not having to fight or slay Godzilla. Some people are built for that. It's the other moments in life where whatever, they lose their job, and that's where they want. It's not, some people will fight Godzilla and they'll try to slay him, but they'll lose their job or feel humiliated or lose a woman they love or whatever. And that's a kryptonite. We all have, you know, sometimes the same guy that's a warrior that will dance and sing and party before the war, there's some other thing that they find so humiliating that they want to tap out. You know, they have some other Achilles heel.
There are many there are as many iterations of humanity there are those issues that are, you know, it can do that, and that makes us human. It's not what we suffer from, it's that we all suffer at some point, and that's what connects us that's what connects us in our humanity. It connects us in, you know, Gordon Ryan has his own Achilles heel that runs right through his gut. You know, everyone has it. John Danaher has dealt with his hip issues. Dan Gables with his family tragedy that he had to grow up with and face. We all have those things, and we all have, you know, that's the commonality. And whether we want to show it or not, that's a personal choice. Whether we want to show our weakness, that is a personal choice. But if you choose to suffer silently, know that you're not alone. You know, we all suffer. We all suffer from things. I didn't mention it, but yesterday, you know, wife went to go to the gym. Toyota Camry didn't start. The rest of my afternoon, I was occupied with getting a battery and me putting a new battery in that car. This morning, I had to go back, take the old battery to get my $12 whatever, you know, recovery fee. Anyways, we all suffer from certain things, and we suffer from things that are different than others, but we all suffer, and that's the commonality. Hey, I got turkey in the oven. I've got to go check on. You know,
Is that what's that called? Tryptophan, or what's it called?
Oh yeah, definitely some tryptophan. Speaking of suffering, I've got an oven here, and you know, when you put something in the oven with a gas oven, the problem with it, you know, is it lights and then it turns off. Well, it doesn't relight reliably, so I lost like an hour of cooking time. I went over there to look at it because I also had some stuffed Anaheim chili peppers that I'd made, and I just put them in. I'm like, I opened up the oven. I'm like, this oven's cold. You know, it's like 120 degrees. Like, I mean, you know, for an oven. This oven's cold, and I've got my turkey in there. You know, because the turkey's for dinner, but I had.
See,
I'm like,
for
what?
me, I my big problem is I handle life's big challenges very well, and it's the little ones, those little landmines that you don't. That, you know, like I was telling you with some of the grad school stuff I'm working on now, like just trying to get authentication. Like, oh my God, like these are the things that
it's landmines
that test my spirit, and you're just like, oh my goodness, like
I know. I'm like, it's so easy, you know.
I would rather grapple with a 250-pound bear than spend 3 hours trying to, you know, get into my own account, my own new grad school. You know.
Well, you know, you gotta just, when you store those passwords, you got, you know, you can just develop that habit of, as soon as you with that username and password, and they say don't write the stuff, write that stuff down. It's okay. No one's going to go into your stuff. Write that thing down, and then later on you'll change it. You'll develop. You know, there's a methodology to passwords where you don't use the same password everywhere. You know, like you can append. You know, like let's say my password's LV Raiders 21. Okay, and 21 being the year. Okay, but I go to a website that's like your cable login. So cable login is like Cox, you know, cable. Okay, so you do like LV Raiders.
Coxman. Yeah, you're at a Cox.
Yeah, you just add whatever website that is, but you don't just don't write it as that. Like an O, you substitute for a 0, an L, you substitute for a 1, an E, you substitute for a 3. You throw that in the mix, and you develop a methodology.
Noah Green's Art of the Password. Noah Green's Art of the
Cybersecurity. Yeah, cybersecurity. No, this is what they tell you. You don't use the same password, but you mix it up enough to where you're like, you know your password patterns, and it's a methodology. And then I change mine I'm a crazy person. I change my passwords at least every 3 months. I'm constantly changing my passwords, but I'm doing it because I'm like updating, like, oh yeah, now I've got this new password technique that I'm doing. That's just what I do. But anyways, last thought I want to leave you, because I do need to check on that turkey, is, you know, I have an Audible membership, and I also use, sorry about that, I'm wiggling the table here. I Audible for my audiobooks, but I've also been using Libby, which is, they used to call it Overdrive, but Libby is like an app on your phone. You can download audiobooks for free from your public libraries. Okay, and you can like read them on Kindle. You can read ebooks on Kindle. You know, you don't have to be paying out all this money for these things. Well, I still keep my Audible membership like $15 a month, and there's not an ad for them, but I get these credits, and I go in and I use my credits. And I had pre-ordered Hickson Gracie's biography, Breathe, and it seemed like it was delayed for a month or two, and it finally came out. And I listened to that thing completely within a day, okay, and it was like I really enjoyed it. It was good background to get that, and it triggered my thought that I want.
Is he reading? He's reading over? He's actually in the book. He's reading his own book. Is he reading it in the Audible version?
No, he has a narrator, and that it irks me a little bit because the narrator, because I speak Brazilian Portuguese, the narrator like uses sometimes his Spanish comes out because like you can say something in Spanish, but it's not Brazilian Portuguese. It just by the words. Okay, for example, do you say Jose Aldo or do you say Jose Aldo? Okay,
Right.
it's little things like that.
But the Spanish translator is saying it in English. They're saying the book in they're reading it.
Yeah, it's an English language book. But he'll
why
say,
is Hickson Gracie not narrating his own book? That makes no sense to me. I mean, why
yeah, I don't know. This is profession developed kind of books, but it's a great book. I recommend it.
That he couldn't bring the emotion or the theatrics to it, even though he couldn't bring the, he couldn't bring the theatrics to his own. I mean, because a lot of people probably can't. They write it, but to read it, because when I write my books, you're going to hear my voice. Yeah,
not every author should narrate their own books.
You're right.
Okay.
No, I've got a voice. My voice is made, and by the way, I'm not saying this voice because I can change my voice. I can adapt my voice in many different ways. It's a gift. But yeah, I will absolutely read all of the.
Well, I appreciate the compliment he made about Henzo's Academy. He said, that it's a. He said something like, "It's a real what do you call that? Lion's den of a jiu-jitsu academy to become a blue belt." And I'm like, some nights it really felt like that, and other times as I stopped fighting against myself, and that's key. When you stop fighting against yourself, jiu-jitsu gets easier in a lot of ways. It's harder, but easier.
Did Hickson talk about the death of his son Hoxton? Does he?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. You know what? He uses some colorful language in it. So it's not something you want to play, on a speaker in front of children. That's why I have my headphones. Now I have the ones with the cords because I got to buy AirPods again at some point. Yeah, no, it filled in the blanks because I had some questions about, well, why isn't it called Gracie Jiu-Jitsu anymore? And the divisions of the family, and it gave a lot of biographical background. I'm going to pull a book here. Whoa, sorry. I don't know if you heard that. So I got this book right here from Hyla Gracie. Now Hyla, this one's in Portuguese. I left the English language version in the New York City apartment. I got to go back some point to New York and get that stuff. But it eliminated a lot of this biography is it's 550 something pages long. But and this was in Portuguese. I've been struggling to finish it.
Yeah, I think that the two most to me the two most interesting Gracies that are living, if I was going to read, would be Hickson and Henzo. I don't know that Henzo could write a lot of the things. I suspect he'd have to edit out and filter out as authentic as he is. I don't think he could put. He's lived a very colorful life, and I think he'd have to have a lot of, to be a pretty good editor. But him and Hickson would be the two. Hickson has always had the most mystique of all the Gracies. He has the most mystique. You don't he doesn't readily share as much as there, there's stuff out there on him. You don't always know what is Rickson thinking. As Renzo is an extrovert, he's everybody's best friend. He's so approachable. He's warm.
He is so approachable.
He's philosophical. But Rickson, you almost want to read him the most because you just don't know what's going on in that head of his. You just don't know. He's a very mystical character, and my sense of him as somebody who started jiu-jitsu in 2001. And shortly after that, his son had died in New York City. I believe it was New York City, 19 years old, Calvin Klein model, great looking kid, super athlete. And, and I was training with Pedro Sauer, who's a very close friend of Rickson's. And we didn't get quite the accurate version. Everybody was very respectful. So a lot of people didn't want to even tell what happened there out of respect. But, it was, and I would literally fall asleep watching choke. I would say this is crazy. I would say that Rickson this is crazy because as much as Royce Gracie, and I give Royce a lot of credit, I think Rickson Gracie had a lot more to do with me training and staying jiu-jitsu than Royce did. I watched the choke documentary with Rickson so many more times. I watched that, and I had many more hours of footage of that than I did of any Royce Gracie fights. I was the most fascinated by Rickson. And the one thing that I would say about Rickson that really is like, in a way, the weight of the world was on Rickson even before his son passed, is like, because he was like, there, he was the best. He's asked to defend the family's honor. There's just been so much pressure on the guy. It's almost like you're set up to fail where you can't live up to the expectations. I'm going back 20 some years now.
Yeah.
You could see the pressure, just from afar, like, God, how much pressure it is, where you can only go one way when everybody thinks, you're the greatest, and you have to win not only you have to win every match, but you got to win every training session. If you lose a training session, it'd be front page news. The weight of the world carrying the family name, and it's just like so much. It's something that most of us will never experience, that where you feel like the weight of the world, the family honor, everything rests on you. And that's what Rickson Gracie, I think, I'm conjecturing, I'm reading between the lines. This is my intuition, is that's kind of what he had. Heavy lies the crown, and that's not easy.
It is literally he said that whenever he started to beat holes in training, there was a sadness that he felt from holes as he was whenever Rickson was starting to beat him. And you think this is a generational curse and blessing for them. We talked about suffering a lot in this episode, and I roll with Hyan, Neiman's there. You go in on Saturdays, like I would go in on Saturdays, and in the white belt room, separate to the side, Neiman, Igor, they would have Hyan in there training him. This is indelible. You think about kids, their teenage years, they're out playing, they're having a good time. Hyan is in there training. He's weightlifting. The pressure is coming on him. The pressure is real. You could cut it with a knife. It is real. And you can see Hyan stepping up. He's stepping up. You see, it makes your heart it's just that feeling of like, wow, I'm really a part of something that it's not. This is not a sport, just a sport. It's not. This is a way of life for people, and this is real, very, very real. It's just not like some, and it is. The closer you get to training jiu-jitsu, I've had to spend some time off the mats for various reasons. Especially as I go through my medical stuff. But I keep working on it in my other areas of my life. I keep the flame lit. because you never stop training in your mind. You think you're working on, but you just see the family and you see the responsibility and the privilege it is to have a last name of Gracie and to do these things. And I know several, I know a dozen Gracies personally, and it's special. Last thought. I did invite Rafael Sapo Natal on the show, and I've been talking to him recently about coming on, and I want to get his perspective on how he got started with the Gracies and how he got, because he's from Minas Gerais, but how did that happen? So I would just want to put that out there that I'd like to bring him on, because that's just another facet that we can see, because Sapo trains, he's been an instructor with the Gracies for over a decade.
Wow.
And he has his own academy there in Minas Gerais as well.
Of course, he fought in UFC, UFC veteran, had a number of fights there, and was your coach there in New York City as well. So
yeah, so want to throw that out there. We normally don't talk about future guests coming on, but I wanted to bring that up and dovetail.
We can do whatever. That's the beauty of having a small following right now. We can do whatever we want. That's the beauty.
It's awesome.
Right,
it's awesome. Yeah.
All in that. We could pivot, we could rebrand, we could change the logo. We can do. We got a lot of freedom right now.
Yeah, it's freedom. There's a lot of freedom without any cost to it. I haven't looked at our following.
We do keep showing up. We missed some, but all in all, if you go back to whatever it was, a year and a half ago, we've accumulated a nice little library of content. And like I've said, I mean, it might sound arrogant, it might sound boastful, but I just would say to anybody out there, I know we don't have the best production. I know we don't have the best marketing. I know we don't have the best whatever, but if you comb through these episodes, I'm telling you, there's jewels, there's gems. I'll put the jewels and gems that we're dropping in these episodes, the nuggets, the kernels of wisdom, the nuggets, I'll put it up against anybody out there in the fight sports, just in terms of teaching the stuff that actually works, in terms of the ability to communicate it well, the ability to articulate it, the stuff that really works, the stuff that a lot of people don't think of, the word play, the best words to describe it. I'll put it up against anybody out there. I'll put it up, I'm telling you, substance, not the style, not the gloss, not the presentation, not the audio, the substance of what we talk about here. You can take pouring through it for 1 hour, 90 minutes, man. There's jewels of wisdom. There's nuggets. So
yep, absolutely.
For the person that wants to do, Peter Drucker was like that. If you could sit through those long lectures, man, you'd be like, wow, okay, wow, it'll work. So anyway,
right. I'll see you next Sunday.
Enjoy that turkey, buddy. Enjoy the
Thank
turkey.
you.
Stay alive.
Thank you. Absolutely. Oh yeah. All right. Take care. Buddy. Nice to see you again. This has been Everyman BJJ podcast. Like I said, we try to show up 1:30 to 2 Pacific time. That's 4:30 to 5 on Sundays, and this definitely goes on YouTube. There's also everymanbjj.com. I also have everymanbjj@gmail.com. The way you reach out with observations, and especially if you're struggling, don't be shy. I respond. Take care.